The shower ran hard behind the closed door and my wife's voice hit the tile like a slap. She sounded small and stuck. I heard her shift her feet in the tub, then a sharp gasp when the spray struck her face. Water kept pounding the curtain, too high, too loud, like it had been aimed on purpose. She said my name again, slower this time, like she did not want to ask. I had set the shower head to the highest setting before I stepped out. I did it the same way every time, like it was just habit. Like it was a normal thing a tall husband did in a shared bathroom. I was taller than her by enough that the world felt built for me and slightly out of reach for her. That was the obvious excuse. I could tell myself it was for comfort. I could tell myself it was so the water hit my shoulders and not my chest. But I also knew the sound she made when she realized she could not reach it. I knew the pause. That moment where she tried one more time, stretching up on her toes, fingers skimming air, before she gave up and called out. The water stayed on because she was already wet and she hated starting over. She hated stepping out to ask. She hated the cold. So she called. It was practical. It was trusting. It meant she believed the problem in the shower was an accident and not something I had arranged. I stood outside the bathroom with my hand near the handle and listened for one more second. The running water covered everything. It covered the small sounds. It covered the feeling of my heartbeat in my throat. I could have told her how to do it. I could have waited and let her figure it out. I could have said, just turn the knob on the slide and it will drop. Instead, I opened the door. Steam rolled out fast, thick and warm. The light in there looked softer through it, like the room had been blurred on purpose. The shower curtain was not fully closed. It never was when she needed me. There was always a gap at the edge, just enough to see the shape of her shoulder and the side of her waist when she leaned forward. She kept one arm across her chest, not to hide, but because the water kept hitting her upper body in an awkward angle. Her hair clung to her cheeks. She looked annoyed but not angry. She looked at me like I was supposed to fix it, like it was simple, like I had done it 1,000 times. I cannot reach it, she said over the spray. Her voice was calm, but there was that edge of discomfort. It was the feeling of being exposed and helpless in the same second. I got it, I said. I stepped closer and the tile was slick under my feet. I felt the heat of the room and the cooler air behind me. The curtain stuck to my arm for a second. I could see her clearly through the gap. There was nothing dramatic about it. No big reveal. Just my wife, wet and real, looking at me for help. And I looked back. That was the truth I kept buried under routine. I acted like a problem had to be solved. I acted like I was a good husband, quick and helpful, coming in like a hero to fix a stupid shower head. But the part of me that moved faster than thought did it for a different reason. I wanted an extra moment. A few seconds where she had to call me in, where she had to let me see her like this, because she needed something. I reached up for the shower head adjustment without thinking, like I had practiced it. The shower had an adjustable rail with a sliding holder. You pressed a button, then moved the head up or down. Simple, clean, modern. The kind of thing that made this whole situation feel even more stupid. One small button between comfort and discomfort. One small button between privacy and me being in the room. My fingers found the button. I pressed it. And then I stopped. Because the holder did not move. It was already at the top. Not just high, not just my setting. It was pushed as far up as the rail allowed. The plastic piece sat tight against the end like it had been forced there. The shower head angled down at her like it was watching. For a second I felt a quiet shock, a cold spot under the steam. I had told myself I was setting it high for me, and she was the one who could not reach. That story kept it playful. That story kept it harmless. That story made me the tall husband and her the short wife and the shower just an annoying little problem. But the truth sat in my hand. There was nowhere higher to go, and there was no easy way to lower it from where I stood. Not without stretching. Not without looking like I could not reach the thing I always claimed was for me. My wife watched me through the gap, waiting. Water kept striking her shoulder, then splashing into her face. She blinked hard. Her patience started to thin in a way I could hear even when she said nothing. I reached up anyway, arm extended, and my fingertips barely touched the top of the holder. I had to lift onto my toes. The tile slipped a little. The movement was small, but it was enough to make my stomach drop. If the tall person setting was not even tall enough for me, then what was I really doing? I stayed on my toes with my arms stretched up, and I felt stupid in a way that made my face hot under the steam. I had built my excuse around height. I had repeated it so many times that it sounded true even in my own head. Tall husband, short wife, adjustable shower. Simple. Normal. My wife waited with water striking her skin at the wrong angle, blinking it out of her eyes. She trusted me enough to stand there and let me fix it. That trust had been part of our marriage for years, and it showed up in small places people did not talk about. Like a bathroom door that stayed unlocked. Like a towel she grabbed without asking. Like the way she never flinched when I walked past the mirror while she brushed her hair. I could see her undressed often. That was not the problem. We shared a home. We shared a bed. We changed clothes in the same room. Sometimes she talked to me while she put lotion on her arms, like her body was not a secret I had to earn. Sometimes she stepped into the shower while I stood at the sink and talked about nothing important. I had access to her life in 100 normal ways. So what I did with the shower head was not about me being denied anything. It was about a feeling I chased because it came with a different kind of permission. It was the difference between being allowed and being needed. In my head, that difference mattered more than it should have. Our routines had always been the quiet glue between bigger moments. We did not fight about the large things. We did not slam doors or throw words that could not be taken back. We lived in patterns that made life easy, and easy started to feel like safe. When something happened the same way enough times, you stopped checking it. You stopped asking why. That was how the shower became predictable. The bathroom itself encouraged it. Everything was clean and modern. The shower had a rail with a holder that slid up and down. The water controls were simple. Nothing was broken. Nothing was loose. There was no real reason for that holder to ever be stuck at the very top unless someone put it there. And in our home, I was the one who touched it first. I had told myself that was just how it happened. I showered earlier sometimes. I was taller, so I set it higher. She came in later and lowered it. It became a back and forth, like a harmless game, like two people sharing the same space and adjusting for comfort. It sounded like compromise. But the truth was that it did not go back and forth evenly. It always started with me pushing it up as far as it could go. Not high, highest, not comfortable, extreme. I remembered the first time it happened, not because it was special, but because it was so easy. I had stepped out of the shower, reached up, and lifted it without thinking. The click at the top sounded final, like a lock. Later she had turned on the water, realized she could not reach, and called my name with that annoyed laugh people used when something small went wrong. I had walked in, pretending it was nothing, and I had lowered it while she stood there, naked and wet, looking at me like I was part of the solution, not part of the problem. I had felt a quick rush, quiet, private, the kind that disappeared if you looked at it too long. After that it happened again, not every day at first, then more often. The pattern formed the way all habits formed. One choice repeated until it stopped feeling like a choice. I told myself I was doing a small thing that did not hurt anyone. I told myself she could have asked me to stop at any time. I told myself she could have closed the curtain fully. I told myself she knew I liked her body, and this was part of marriage, part of attraction, part of being playful. But the part I never said out loud was that the play only worked if she did not see it coming. In our relationship, privacy had never been a wall. It had been a soft boundary we respected without a rule book. She knocked when I asked her to. I did the same. We did not embarrass each other. We did not use each other's bodies as jokes in front of other people. Inside our home, we were casual and close, but there was still an understanding that choice mattered. That was what I kept stepping around with my little trick. Because her calling me into the bathroom was not the same as me asking, "Can I come in?" It felt cleaner. It felt like consent wrapped in practicality. It felt like I could tell myself I was only being helpful. It was a small lie I enjoyed too much. Standing there by the shower rail, I understood something I had avoided. The shower head being too high for her was not just inconvenience. It was a setup. It created a moment where she had to depend on me. She had to say my name. She had to open the door to me being there, even if it was only for 5 seconds. And now, with my arm trembling and my fingertips barely reaching, the setup looked different. If I could not reach it comfortably either, then it was not my setting at all. It was not for my shower. It was not for my comfort. It was only for this moment. Her stuck under the water, me stepping in. The curtain gap, the heat, the excuse. So far, nothing dramatic, just a couple and a shower head. But this routine had one step that only he controlled. I had been about 1.5 feet taller than my wife, and that difference had always looked harmless in daily life. It showed up in kitchen cabinets, in the top shelf of the closet, in the way I reached for things without thinking. I had always been the one who grabbed the box in the back, the one who changed the light bulb, the one who adjusted the mirror after she used it. It had never felt like control. It had felt like convenience. That was why the shower head trick worked so well in my head. It hid inside something we already accepted. Tall person fixed tall person things. Short person asked for help. Nobody got hurt. Nobody got angry. Nobody made it a topic. The shower itself made it easy to pretend it was normal. The rail was sleek metal with a plastic holder that slid along it. There was a button you pressed to unlock the holder, and the whole piece moved up or down with a smooth, soft resistance, then clicked when it settled. It had a top stop, a hard end where it could not go higher. When it hit that stop, it did not feel like a choice anymore. It felt finished. Like the shower had a natural highest position and I was simply using it. I had always pushed it to that top stop before she went in. I did not lower it to a comfortable height for me. I did not stop at the point where the water hit my shoulders. I did not leave it in the middle so either of us could adjust it with one hand. I lifted it until it could not lift anymore. Highest point every time. The final click, the end of the rail. If someone watched me do it for 1 second, it could have looked like preparation. Like I was straightening the bathroom, like I was leaving things neat, like I was setting it for the next shower. It did not look like a plan. It looked like tidying. And I liked that. Because my wife had never walked into the bathroom thinking I was setting a trap. She had walked in thinking she was about to shower. She had trusted the room. She had trusted the routine. She had trusted me. Inside the steam, I watched the way she tried to solve it on her own before she asked. She always did that. She never reached for help first. She tried to fix the problem with her own hands. She tried to keep her comfort without involving anyone else. She stood under the spray, then stepped back when the water struck too high and bounced off her head and face. She squinted, then turned her chin away, trying to get the stream to hit her shoulders. She reached up, first casually, like the rail would be within range. Her arm extended. Her fingers opened and closed around empty air. Then she tried again higher. She shifted her feet for balance on the slick tub floor. She rose onto her toes, spine stretched, ribs lifting as she reached. Her wet palms skimmed the metal rail but not the button, not the holder, not the part she needed. I noticed the details because I had created the moment. I knew exactly which movement would fail. She could touch the rail, but she could not press the release and slide the holder down. The button sat up near the top where the shower head holder was, and the angle mattered. It was not enough to touch it. You had to press and hold, then pull down in one smooth motion. From inside the shower, with water hitting her and steam fogging her eyes, it was worse. Her hands were wet. The plastic was slick. Her feet were not planted like mine were outside the tub. She had less traction, less leverage. Even if she could barely reach the button with her fingertips, she could not hold it in while pulling the holder down. The mechanism was designed for someone who could grip it fully. And I had always acted like her struggle was just height. That was another part of the trick. I reduced it to one simple fact so nobody would look closer. She was short. I was tall. End of story. The physical gap explained everything. But the gap did more than explain it. It created dependence. I watched her try a third time, the last one before she called me. This attempt always carried a small change in her face. The practical confidence slipped. Not panic, not fear, just a quiet frustration. The kind that came from being in a private moment and having it disrupted. She lowered her arm and exhaled hard. Water ran down her forearm in steady lines. The spray still hit too high, so it still splashed back into her eyes. She blinked rapidly and looked toward the curtain gap like she expected me to already be there. That look was part of the routine too. She did not want to yell. She did not want to make it a big thing. She wanted the problem to disappear with as little attention as possible. She wanted to go back to the feeling of being alone in the warm water, where her body belonged only to her. I had always taken advantage of that. I had always come in calm, like this was a simple service I provided. I moved with confidence because confidence made it feel normal. It made it feel like I belonged in the doorway while she stood undressed. It made it feel like she was the one who invited me, even if she had only asked for a shower adjustment. I had never rushed. I had never acted excited. I had never smiled too wide. I had never stared. I had tried to be the same person I was when I fixed a cabinet hinge or found a lost charger. Because if I acted like a man who wanted to see her naked, the moment would change shape. It would become something else. It would become a question. So I kept my face neutral. I kept my voice low. I said I got it like I was doing something boring. That was how a small change became a dependable loop. I lifted the holder up to the top before she showered. She could not reach it from inside. She tried anyway. She failed. She sighed. She called my name. The whole situation depended on one fact. She could not reach it. And I knew, standing there with my arm still extended, that I had made sure of that fact on purpose. Because if she could reach it, she would not need me. If she did not need me, I would not have a reason to step into the steam and stand at the edge of her privacy with a clean excuse in my hand. I had always told myself it was a harmless little thing, but as my fingertips strained for the top stop and my toes slipped slightly on the wet tile, I understood how fragile that excuse was. It only stayed harmless as long as she never noticed how high I really set it. And that means the next step was always the same. She called him. She stepped into the shower and pulled the curtain most of the way closed. The water turned on right after. It hit high, like rain hitting a window. The spray bounced off her head and face and scattered into the tub. She shifted left, then right. She tried to find the stream with her shoulders. It did not land where she needed it. It was too high. It always was. I stood in the hallway outside the bathroom, close enough to hear everything through the door. The water covered most sounds, but not the ones that mattered. I heard her breathe in fast. I heard her feet slide. I heard the small slap of wet skin against the curtain when she bumped it. Then I heard the reach. It was a quiet sound, fingertips brushing the metal rail. The shower head holder sat at the top stop. I knew it. I had put it there. But she did not know that part. She only knew she could not fix it. She reached once and failed. She reached again, higher, slower. Her arm had to stretch fully. She had to rise onto her toes. She had to lean forward while water kept hitting her. It was an uncomfortable movement in a slippery space. Her fingers found the rail again, but not the release button. She lowered her arm and stood still for one long second. The water kept running. The steam thickened. She made a sound that was not a word, like a short, frustrated exhale. I waited. That was the part that made it feel wrong when I looked at it directly, not the shower head itself. Not the height difference. The waiting. The fact that I stood there and listened, knowing what would happen next and doing nothing until she asked. She tried a third time. This time she aimed for the button. She reached up with her palm open like she wanted to press it flat. Her fingers barely touched the plastic. She could not get a grip. She could not hold it down. She could not pull the holder while pressing. It was not possible from her angle. Her hand dropped. The sound was sharper, a wet slap against her thigh. She said my name. It was not loud. It was not angry. It was the normal voice she used when she needed something small. That tone was the reason I got away with it. It turned a private moment into a simple request. It made it sound like I was the helpful part of the house. I answered right away, like I had not been waiting for it. Yeah. Can you come lower it, she said. I cannot reach. I walked to the bathroom door and put my hand on the handle. I did not knock. I never knocked for this because she had already called me. That was the point. She had invited the fix, even if she did not invite the rest of it. I opened the door. Steam rolled out and wrapped around my face. It smelled like soap and warm water. The room felt smaller when I stepped in. The tiles shined under the light. Everything echoed. The spray sounded louder from inside. The curtain shifted with the air I carried in. She stood behind it and the curtain did not fully cover her. It never did when she needed help. There was always a gap where the curtain met the wall. I could see her shoulder. I could see the top of her arm. I could see the line of her side when she leaned forward. She pulled her hair back with one hand, trying to keep it from her eyes. She looked toward me through the gap like she expected me to already be reaching up, like she expected me to make it easy again. I moved closer to the tub. The floor was damp from the steam and the water that escaped around the curtain. My bare feet found the cold, slick tile. I stepped carefully. I did not want to slip. I also did not want to hesitate. Hesitation would have looked like I was thinking about the wrong thing. I kept my voice calm. "Where do you want it?" I asked. "Just lower," she said, "please." Please. That word hit me harder than it should have. It made the moment feel less like a joke and more like a favor she had to ask for while she stood exposed. It added weight to something I had kept light. I reached for the shower head holder. The mechanism had a simple release. You pressed the button, then slid it down. That was what I always did, smooth, quick, like it was nothing. Like the whole thing took 1 second and I barely noticed her body at all. But in that moment, with steam in my eyes and my wife standing naked behind a thin curtain, I noticed everything. I noticed her posture, slightly hunched, arms held close, not to hide from me, but because the water kept hitting wrong and the room felt open. I noticed the way her skin turned pink under hot water. I noticed how she waited still, trusting me to fix it without making it strange. I pressed the button. My fingers slipped at first because everything was wet. The plastic was slick. I pressed again. I held it. I tried to slide the holder down. It did not move right away. It caught for a moment at the top stop, like it had been jammed there too hard. I pulled down and the holder resisted, then finally gave in. It slid with a tight scrape before it moved smoothly. The shower head dropped several inches. The spray shifted lower and hit her shoulders instead of her face. She let out a breath like relief. "Thank you," she said. Her voice softened. The problem had been solved. That was how fast the room tried to return to normal. One adjustment and the tension should have disappeared. But it did not disappear for me. Because I had felt the resistance at the top. I had felt how far it had been pushed. I had seen how impossible it was for her to reach. And I had felt my own small rush at being called in, even though I could see her any time in our life without tricks. I stepped back from the tub. I kept my eyes up. I kept my face neutral. I acted like I had done nothing but lower a shower head. Then I left the bathroom and pulled the door mostly closed behind me, like I was giving her privacy back. In the hallway, the air felt cooler. The steam did not follow me as far. The sound of running water stayed behind the door, steady and normal, like nothing had happened. But I knew what had happened. This was the first time we clearly saw the pattern. Set it high, wait for the call. Is this playful closeness, or a setup she did not agree to? I stood in the hallway with the bathroom door almost closed, and I listened to the water settle into a steady sound again. From the outside, it all looked normal. A couple sharing a bathroom, a small adjustment, a quick thank you, end of it. But I kept seeing my hand on that holder at the top stop. It had not been easy for me. When I reached up, my shoulder had tightened. My arm had fully extended. I had lifted onto my toes on wet tile. For a second, I had felt my balance shift, like the floor wanted to take me down. The holder had been so high that I had needed the same stretched posture she had tried inside the tub. That detail should have killed my excuse. If the setting was for my comfort, it should have fit me. It should have been natural. It should have been a simple reach with my feet flat on the ground. Instead, it had been a strain. I knew then what I had been refusing to name. My wife had never realized it was too high for me too. She had assumed the obvious story. I was tall. I set it high. She was shorter. She needed help. She did not question it because it matched the rest of our lives. She asked me to reach high shelves. She asked me to carry heavy boxes. She handed me things without thinking. This was just one more version of that. And I had used that assumption like cover. I had not raised the shower head because I liked it there. I had raised it because I liked what happened after. In my head, the calculation had been simple. If I put it at the highest point, she would not be able to fix it. If she could not fix it, she would have to call me. If she called me, I would have a reason to walk in. I would not have to ask. I would not have to risk hearing no. I would not have to show one in a way that felt vulnerable. I could just show up as the solution. That was the part that made my stomach feel tight, even while I told myself it was a joke. I had not been chasing her body. I already had her body in the real ways that mattered. I had been chasing a moment where she needed me, where she opened the door to me, where the decision looked like it came from her. I leaned my head back against the wall and let the cool paint touch my skin. The hallway light felt harsh compared to the bathroom steam. The air smelled clean out here, not like soap and heat. I could still hear the spray hitting the tile. I thought about the way she had said please. She had not said it like I was a stranger. She had said it like I was her husband and she expected kindness. But she had still needed to ask for help while she stood naked, water running, eyes stinging. She had still been the one in the weaker position. That should have made me hurry in and hurry out with no extra thoughts. Instead, I had walked in with that calm confidence because the calm was part of the trick. Calm made it feel normal. Calm made her relax. Calm made her think I was only doing what any husband did. And the worst part was that I had felt satisfied when she called. Not in a loud, obvious way, not like I laughed to myself. It was quieter than that. It was a small warmth in my chest, the feeling of being wanted for a task, of being necessary. I had felt it even while my guilt tried to bite through it. I replayed the moment. My fingers slipped on the button. If I had slipped harder, if I had lost my footing, if I had made it look difficult, she might have noticed. She might have stared at my outstretched arm and the height of the holder and asked a simple question. How high did you put that thing? I imagined her face if she understood. Not shock, not screaming, just the slow change in her eyes when trust shifted into suspicion. The private space would not feel private anymore. The shower would not feel like hers anymore. The routine would not feel safe. I had always told myself it was harmless because it ended fast and she laughed sometimes. But laughter did not mean agreement. It only meant she believed the story I gave her. And I understood, standing there, that the story was thin. The excuse was height. The reality was intention. I heard her move behind the curtain. A soft rustle, the sound of the bottle cap clicking, normal shower sounds. a normal marriage soundscape, but it all felt slightly different now, like I had changed the room without moving any furniture. I walked away from the bathroom door and kept my steps quiet. I did not want to be caught lingering. That would have looked like I was waiting for more. I had already taken enough. My wife kept showering, unaware, relaxed again. I kept breathing in the cool hallway air, trying to convince myself it was still nothing, trying to keep it small. But I could not ignore the one fact that made everything else tilt. If she ever noticed, the little thing could become a big problem. I told myself it was harmless because it sounded harmless when I said it in my head. It was a shower head. It was a small plastic button. It was inches on a rail, nothing sharp, nothing violent, nothing anyone would call dangerous. I used that to calm the part of me that felt the wrongness. I repeated the same phrases until they felt like facts. We were married. We lived together. We saw each other naked. I was not sneaking into a stranger's room. I was not breaking a lock. I was not taking pictures. I was not asking her to do anything she did not already do. I was only lowering a shower head when she asked. That was how I made it sound clean. But even as I told myself that, I knew I was not chasing access. Access was everywhere in our life. I could see her body in ordinary moments that had nothing to do with me getting my way. I could see her in the bedroom, in the closet, in the mirror when she stepped past me without thinking. None of that required a trick. What I chased was the extra moment that came with a reason. The call from behind the curtain did something to my brain that normal closeness did not do. It made me feel needed. It made me feel chosen. It gave me a role I did not have to ask for. It turned her private moment into a moment where she had to reach for me. That was the part I did not say out loud, because it sounded worse when it had words. I tried to frame it as playful, a little joke between us. The same way couples teased each other by hiding a remote or putting something on a high shelf. I tried to make it a shared thing in my mind, even though she never agreed it was a game. She never said, "Do it again tomorrow." She never said, "I like when you make me call you in." She only reacted to the problem I created. That was where my logic started to crack if I stared at it too long. A prank was only a prank when both people laughed and both people could stop it. This was different. This relied on one fact that never changed. She could not reach it. She could not fix it easily from inside the shower. The room was built in a way that gave me the advantage. I told myself I was not forcing anything. I said that a lot. I am not forcing anything. She called me. She asked. She said please. She could have waited. She could have shut off the water and stepped out. She could have insisted on privacy. But I knew why she did not. She did not want to drip water all over the floor. She did not want cold air on her skin. She did not want the interruption. She wanted the shower to keep being a shower. She wanted comfort. She wanted it over fast. In that moment, the easiest path was to call me. I had made sure the easiest path led straight to me. That was the part I tried not to touch because it felt like control when I named it. I preferred the softer words: habit, convenience, height difference, routine. Those words made it sound like life, not like a choice I repeated with intention. I also told myself it was only for a few seconds. That was another excuse I used like a shield. I only went in for a moment. I adjusted it and left. I did not linger. I did not make comments about her body. I did not touch her. I did not ask her to open the curtain. I kept my eyes up. I acted bored. I acted like a man doing a simple task. But the performance was part of it too. I stayed calm because calm kept the moment from turning into a question. Calm made it look like I had nothing to hide. Calm made her feel safe while I took what I wanted from the situation. The proof was in my own body. My heart always beat faster, even when my face stayed neutral. My hand always moved a little quicker than it needed to. That was not boredom. That was hunger with a polite mask. The more I examined it, the more I saw what I had been chasing. It was not just her nakedness. It was the feeling of getting away with it, the small secret, the private win, the knowledge that I could steer a moment without her realizing I had touched the wheel. He was not chasing access. He was chasing the feeling of getting away with it. That sentence would have sounded ugly if I said it to anyone. It made me sound like a thief in my own home, so I softened it again. I said I was being playful. I said it kept things fun. I said it was a little spark in the routine. I said marriages needed little sparks. But sparks could burn things down if you kept dropping them in the same place. In public, the lines were clear. Consent was clear. Privacy was clear. You knocked on doors. You respected closed spaces. You did not corner someone. You did not create situations where they had to accept you being there. People understood that. People agreed on it. If someone told a story about a man doing that in public, nobody would laugh. At home, the lines blurred because love made people relax. Marriage made people stop guarding the edges. Couples shared bathrooms. Couples walked in while the other brushed their teeth. Couples changed in front of each other. It was easy to hide a boundary crossing inside what looked like normal intimacy. That was what scared me when I let myself be honest. Because if the only difference between respect and disrespect was a bathroom door, then the real difference was intention. And my intention was not clean. My intention was to create a moment she did not choose, then act like she chose it because she asked for help. I thought again about that moment when I struggled to reach the top stop too. It showed me the truth in a physical way I could not explain away. The shower head was not set for me. It was set to be impossible for her. It was set to guarantee her call. When I saw that, my guilt tried to surface, but another part of me pushed it down fast. That part told me it did not matter because she never seemed hurt. She never cried. She never accused me of anything. She only sounded annoyed for a second, then relieved. But the absence of a fight was not the same as permission. I knew how my wife handled discomfort. She minimized it. She moved on. She chose peace. If something felt small, she treated it as small. That was one of the reasons our home felt calm. It was also the reason my trick stayed hidden. Her trust filled in the gaps where questions could have been. And I had been using her trust like a tool. The longer I sat with that thought, the more the bathroom started to feel different in my mind. Not as a room, but as a boundary. A place where she should have been able to exist without being managed. A place where she should not have needed to call for help unless she wanted to. A place where her body should have belonged to her, even inside a marriage. I kept telling myself I would stop. I told myself it was only a phase. I told myself I would set it lower next time and be normal. But I also knew how routines worked. They became invisible. They became automatic. They became a quiet power you did not want to give up, because giving it up meant admitting it had been power. And that was the moment the moral question stopped being abstract for me. It stopped being a cute thought about marriage and flirting. It became a problem of choice. Her choice. My choice. And the way my choice quietly erased hers. I imagined her noticing one day. Noticing that the holder sat at the highest stop. Noticing that I had to stretch to move it. Noticing that it was not for me at all. Just for the moment where she called. I imagined the silence that would follow, the way her eyes would change, the way the curtain gap would no longer feel accidental. But what did it mean when one partner engineered a situation the other could not avoid? I tried to picture what it looked like from her side of the curtain, because that was the only way to measure the damage I might have been causing. From my side, it had been a small trick. From her side, it had been a private moment interrupted by a problem she did not create. She stepped into the shower expecting comfort, warm water, quiet. A few minutes where her body belonged to her without anyone asking anything from it. That was what showers were for, not just getting clean but resetting. The one room in the house where you could close a curtain and breathe. Then the water hit wrong. It hit too high and stung her eyes. It hit her scalp and ran down her face. It forced her to tilt her head and turn her shoulders and fight the stream. It made her aware of her body in a way that was not relaxing, not sensual, just irritating. In that first second, she probably told herself the simplest story. I had showered before her. I had moved the head up because I was tall. She would move it down because she was shorter. Normal, no deeper meaning. That was the comfort of trust. It filled in the blank spaces with kind explanations. When she reached up and failed, the feeling changed. It was not just inconvenience anymore. It was vulnerability. I knew my wife. She liked solving small problems on her own. She liked feeling capable in her own house. When something got in her way, she did not like making it anyone else's job. Even with me, even in a marriage, she carried that instinct. Fix it first. Ask later. So she stretched up, toes on a slick floor, water striking her skin, curtain stuck to her arm. Her hair got in her eyes. Her fingers slid off the rail. She probably felt foolish too, but in a different way than I did. My foolishness came from guilt. Hers came from being forced into a childish reach in a place where she should have felt steady. And still she tried again. Each failed reach pushed her closer to the point where she had to speak up. That point mattered. Calling for help while dressed was easy. Calling for help while naked was different, even if the person outside the door was your husband. Because the call itself changed the room. Before she said my name, she had privacy. After she said my name, she had an audience, even if she did not want one. She had to decide how much curtain to hold closed. She had to decide whether to step back, whether to cover her chest with one arm, whether to turn her body away. Those choices happened fast under stress, and they were not choices she should have needed to make at all. But she made them because she trusted me to keep it simple. She called me because she could not solve it alone. That was the plain truth. If she had been able to reach the holder, she would have fixed it and moved on. She did not call because she wanted a moment. She called because she wanted the problem gone. I imagined what she might have felt as she waited for my footsteps. The water kept running. The steam kept building. Her skin kept flushing hot. Every second stretched. She stood there exposed, listening for a response, and that alone could make a person tense. You became aware of the curtain not fully closing. You became aware of the gap near the wall. You became aware that your body could be seen if someone chose to look. But she did not think I would choose to look. She likely read my entry into the bathroom as practical help, not as a plan. She probably felt a small relief when I answered like, "Good, he is there, it will be fixed." That relief was another kind of trust. She believed I would handle it quickly and leave. And I usually did, at least in the obvious way. I pressed the button. I slid the holder down. I made sure the spray landed on her shoulders instead of her face. I solved the problem I created. Then I backed away and closed the door most of the way, like I had been respectful the whole time. From her perspective, that probably looked like a good husband moment. Not romantic, not intimate, just reliable. The kind of small help people remembered when they described a marriage as solid. That thought made my throat feel tight. Because there was a second layer she did not see. The quiet layer where I listened from the hallway. The layer where I timed my entrance. The layer where my eyes registered her skin and my mind enjoyed the closeness I had manufactured. She did not know that layer existed. The physical imbalance between us was real. I was taller. My arms were longer, I could reach things she could not. But the power imbalance in the shower was not just physical, it was situational. She was wet. She was uncovered. Her eyes were stinging. Her feet were less stable. Her ability to choose was reduced not by force but by discomfort and design. And I stood outside that discomfort with dry feet, holding the solution. She never said she felt threatened. She never acted afraid. She never snapped at me. If anything, she seemed mildly annoyed at the shower head, not at me. That was exactly what made it so easy for me to keep going. Her reaction gave me permission in my own head, even though she had never truly given it. But I knew how quickly that could flip if she saw the pattern. Right now, she believed it was an accident. She believed it was the leftover setting from my shower. She believed the story because it matched the basic facts of our life, and because she did not want to believe anything worse. She thought it was an accident. He knew it was a pattern. If she ever connected those dots, the moment would change instantly. The same shower head, the same rail, the same click at the top would stop being a small annoyance. It would become evidence. She would replay every time she had called my name. She would replay my calm voice. She would replay how quickly I appeared, like I had been nearby already. She would replay the curtain gap and wonder if I had noticed it on purpose. She would replay her own pleas and feel embarrassed by it, not because she had done anything wrong, but because she had trusted the wrong explanation. And I could not pretend that would stay contained in the bathroom. Once someone questioned your intention in a private space, they started questioning it in every private space. They started closing doors. They started locking them. They started covering up, not because they stopped loving you, but because their comfort had been traded for your little joke. The worst part was that she would not need proof beyond the height itself. She only needed to see me reach for the holder and strain. She only needed to notice that I had set it beyond my own comfort. That one detail would tell her everything, without me saying a word. I kept coming back to the same image. Her behind the curtain, water striking her face, trying to reach. Not laughing, not flirting, just trying to fix a simple thing in her own home. Then her voice calling my name. If she ever connected those dots, the moment would change instantly. The sound of the shower ran like a warning through the door, not loud but steady. It filled the small hallway with a soft roar, the kind that made everything else feel distant. When I heard it, I always knew where she was. Behind a thin curtain, wet skin, closed eyes, private space. Then came the pause. It always started with a pause. The second where she realized the spray hit too high. The second where she tried to fix it without me. The second where she decided whether to call or to fight with it. I stood on the other side of the door and waited, holding my breath like I could hear her thoughts through the water. I told myself I waited to give her time. I told myself I waited because she might solve it, but my body stayed ready, like a dog trained to run at a sound. My hand drifted close to the handle without me meaning to. My feet planted where the floorboard did not creak. I had learned the house sounds. I had learned how to move quietly in my own home. Then I heard her voice. My name spoken from behind the curtain. Not angry, not scared, just practical, just a request. That voice carried a strange power. It turned the door into permission. It made the next seconds feel like they belonged to me, even though they did not. It gave me a reason to cross a line without admitting there was a line at all. I answered quickly. Yeah. In that instant before the handle turned, I always faced the same choices. Enter now or wait. Knock or do not knock. Open the door wide or slip in fast. Treat it like nothing or treat it like a secret. I chose fast. Fast kept it clean. Fast made me look helpful. Fast made it look like I only cared about the shower head and nothing else. Fast also meant I got in before she could change her mind, before she could shut off the water and step out, before she could pull the curtain tight and create a barrier that felt more like a wall. I put my hand on the handle. The metal felt cool and certain, like it belonged to the house and not to us. I turned it and opened the door, and steam pressed into my face at once. Warm, wet air, soap, the sweet smell of her shampoo. It clung to my skin like a hand. The bathroom looked softer in steam. Edges blurred, lights glowed, the mirror fogged, the tile shined. The room became smaller, more private, more dangerous in a way I could never explain without sounding insane. The curtain moved slightly, not because she wanted it to, but because air shifted when I entered. That tiny movement always exposed something: a shoulder, a hip, a line of her arm, a shadow of her body behind thin plastic. I told myself not to look. I told myself I could lower the shower head without seeing her. I told myself I would keep my eyes on the rail, on the mechanism, on the task. I told myself I respected her. Then I stepped closer, and the choice became harder, because I saw her without trying. She stood where the water hit her wrong. She held her hair back, her head tilted away from the spray. Her posture showed discomfort more than anything else, and that should have killed any selfish thought in me. It should have made me move like a machine. Fix and leave, fix and leave. But the room did not let me be a machine. The steam made everything feel slower. The water made her skin shine. The thin curtain made her look both near and unreachable at the same time. The gap at the edge made my eyes drift there like a habit. I kept my face calm. I spoke like it was normal. "Where did you want it?" "Lower," she said, "just lower." Her voice carried trust, and that trust felt heavy in my chest. It was the kind of trust that did not ask questions, the kind that assumed I would not twist a small request into something else. I moved my arm up toward the holder. This was the part that decided the tone, the reach, the moment my body told the truth about how high it had been set. My shoulder lifted, my arm stretched, my fingers reached, my feet shifted for balance on damp tile. It was never as easy as it should have been. The top stop sat higher than comfort. It sat higher than normal. It sat higher than it needed to. That strain should have made me stop. It should have made me think, what am I doing? Instead, it made me feel something else too, a small thrill, because the strain proved the plan worked. It proved she could not have fixed it alone. It proved she had to call. It proved I had created a moment that would repeat again and again unless she noticed. My fingers found the release button. Wet plastic, slick. I pressed it and held it. I tried to slide the holder down smoothly, the way I always wanted to. Sometimes it resisted for a split second at the top, like it was stuck there on purpose, like it remembered being forced all the way up. When it resisted, I felt a flash of panic that she would notice my struggle. In that flash, I always made another choice: pretend it was easy or show the truth. I always pretended. I pulled down harder, then eased it into a smooth slide like it had never caught. I made it look routine. I made it look like one clean motion. I made it look like I had done it 1,000 times because it was nothing. The shower head dropped and the spray lowered with it. The water hit her shoulders. Her face relaxed at once. She breathed out, relief immediate and real. "Thank you," she said. Those words always landed like a quiet judgment, even when she did not mean them that way. Thank you for fixing what I could not fix. Thank you for being the taller one. Thank you for being reliable. Thank you for the moment you made me give you. I stepped back. Now came the last choice. Leave fast or linger. Close the door fully or leave it cracked. Look again or keep my eyes up. I left fast. I kept my eyes up. I pulled the door almost shut behind me. In the hallway, the steam faded. The air cooled. The house returned to normal. But my mind stayed in those few seconds, replaying them, testing them, measuring them like they were proof of something. Because the loop was simple and perfect, and that was what made it terrifying. This was the core loop: high setting, call, entry, exposure. In a private space, one extra glance could feel like affection or like betrayal. I kept thinking about the moment she might find out because it did not require a confession. It only required her to watch me reach. 1 second of attention. One glance at my arm stretched up, my heels lifting off wet tile, my fingers straining at the top stop. If she saw that, the story she told herself would break. In my head, I ran through the possible versions of her reaction, and none of them stayed small. In one version, hypothetical, she laughed at first. Not because it was funny, but because surprise sometimes looked like laughter. She would tilt her head and say, "Wait, you could not even reach it easily. Why did you set it that high?" Her tone would stay light, but her eyes would sharpen. The laughter would be a cover while she checked my face for an answer that made sense. If I answered wrong in that moment, the laugh would die fast. In another version, hypothetical, she would not laugh at all. She would go still behind the curtain. The water would keep running, but she would stop moving like the shower was no longer comfortable. She would hold the curtain tighter. She would speak quieter, like she did when something stopped being casual. "Did you do that on purpose?" she would ask. That question would not be about the shower head. It would be about the door. It would be about what I did when she could not see me. It would be about what I wanted when she was not offering it. I pictured her looking down, then back up. Confusion first, then something like embarrassment. Not her embarrassment for being naked, but embarrassment that she had trusted the obvious explanation. People hated feeling fooled in their own home. It made them feel childish. It made them feel like the house itself had turned against them. If she felt that, my joke would stop being a joke. In another version, hypothetical, she would get angry, clean anger. The kind that did not shout but cut. She would say, "So you made it impossible, so I had to call you in." She would say it like a fact, not a guess. And once she said it, there would be no way to unhear it. I imagined trying to answer and hearing how weak my own words sounded. I would probably default to the easiest defense. I would probably smile and shrug and say I was only messing around. I could hear myself saying it in the same calm voice I used in the bathroom. "It was just a joke. You are my wife. I see you naked all the time." That line would be the worst one. Because if I said I saw her naked all the time, I would be admitting that this was not about need. It was about wanting more than I was given in that moment. It would show her that the extra seconds mattered to me enough to arrange them without asking. I could also imagine myself downplaying it so hard that it sounded like I did not respect her reaction. I could see myself acting confused, like she was overreacting, like she was being dramatic about a shower head. And that, hypothetical, would turn her hurt into something colder. She was practical. She liked simple solutions. If she believed I had used her trust, she might stop giving me chances to repeat it, not with a big speech, not with a fight, just with new habits. I pictured those habits like small locks turning in quiet places. In one hypothetical outcome, she would stop calling me in. She would shut off the water and step out, dripping on the tile, and adjust it herself with a towel around her body. It would add extra steps to her shower, but it would remove me from the moment. In another hypothetical outcome, she would start checking the shower head before she undressed. Every time. Like a person who had learned that comfort was not guaranteed. She would test the height with a quick hand and lower it before the curtain closed. That would not sound dramatic if I described it to someone, but inside a marriage, it would be a message. I do not trust you to leave my private space alone unless I prepare for you. In another hypothetical outcome, she would insist on a new rule. Knock. Always. Even if she called, especially if she called. She might say it plainly, like she was setting a boundary that should have been obvious all along. I would agree because I would have to, but I would feel the change. The bathroom would become a place with procedures, not comfort, and that would be my fault. The thing that scared me most was not her anger. It was the way her comfort could die without a fight. Nothing bad had happened on paper. No yelling, no threats, no broken doors. I had walked in when asked and fixed a shower head. That was all. But feelings were the real result. If she felt tricked, the shower would stop being a place where she relaxed. It would become a place where she stayed aware, where she kept the curtain sealed tight, where she listened for footsteps, where she rushed, where she did not take her time. And once that happened, it would spread. Because the shower was not only a shower, it was trust with steam around it. It was the place where she did not have to guard her body from the person she loved. If she believed I had engineered her vulnerability, even once, she might start wondering where else I engineered things. Small moments, small advantages, small situations where her easiest path led to my wants. That was the real consequence. Not a single argument, but the slow change in how she moved through our home. I kept circling back to her simplest possible question. Why did you do that? There was no answer that sounded good. If I told the truth, I would sound like a man who chose a trick over an honest request. If I lied, I would make her doubt her own eyes. If I laughed, I would make her feel alone with her discomfort. And the longer I avoided that conversation, the more the trick stopped being playful and started being a secret I carried around like a weight. Because a secret like that did not stay quiet forever. It waited for the wrong moment, the wrong day, the wrong tone in her voice, the wrong glance at the shower head when my arm reached up and my feet lifted off the floor. So is this harmless teasing, or is it a boundary crossing disguised as help? The truth that kept circling back was simple, and it made my excuses sound thin. I could have seen my wife undressed without any of this. I lived with her. I shared a bedroom with her. I had held her in the dark and in the morning light. I had watched her change without trying to. I had kissed water from her shoulder when she stepped out of the shower. So the shower head trick was never about whether I had access to her body. It was about how I got it. There was a difference between being invited into a moment and arranging a moment so she had to invite me. That difference sounded small when I tried to hide behind routine, but when I faced it directly, it sounded like control. It sounded like I wanted her to say my name from behind a curtain, not because she desired me, but because I made the situation uncomfortable until she needed me. That was what disturbed me most. I had turned a basic need into a lever. People treated consent like it only mattered in obvious situations. Strangers, first dates, parties, public places. They acted like once you shared a last name, the line disappeared. Like marriage was a blanket permission slip that covered every private space. But I knew that was not true. I knew it in the same quiet way people knew a locked door mattered even inside a family house. A closed door meant something. A shower curtain meant something. A person saying, "not right now," meant something. Even if you loved each other. In a long relationship, trust did not come from big moments. It came from thousands of small ones. It came from believing your partner did not use your body when you were not offering it. It came from believing your partner did not treat your private time as an opportunity to win something. That was why my trick felt worse the more I looked at it. It did not need to be dramatic to be wrong. It only needed to be hidden. I could imagine someone saying it was only a shower head. It was only a glance. It was only a second. But a second could change how a person felt in their own skin. The act itself was small. Slide a holder down, step out, close the door. On paper, nothing happened, no touching, no force, no threats, just a husband being helpful. Yet inside my mind, something did happen. I got a private reward, and she did not know she had paid for it. She thought she had asked for help. I knew I had designed the help request. That was the heart of it. The gap between what she thought was happening and what I knew was happening. At the center, one partner knew the truth, the other did not. That imbalance was its own kind of power. It meant I controlled the meaning of the moment without her agreement. She stood there believing it was an accident, and I stood there knowing it was a pattern. And because she did not know, she could not choose how she felt about it. She could not consent to the real situation, only to the fake story I let her live inside. I kept trying to tell myself it was romantic in a strange way, like I was finding a way to be close without making a big request, like I was keeping the spark alive, like I was playful. But when I stripped away the softer words, what remained was not romance. It was surprise and control dressed as convenience. I wanted the moment of her calling me. I wanted the sound of her voice, the reliance, the small helplessness. I wanted to step into the steam like I belonged there, not because she asked for my presence, but because she asked for a fix. I wanted to take the extra glance and leave with it, then act like nothing had happened. That was not affection, that was a secret win. And the darker part was that it worked because she trusted me. It worked because she did not question my motives. It worked because she assumed I would not turn her nakedness into a trap. If she had been suspicious by nature, the trick would have died the first time. It lived because she was safe with me, or because she believed she was. That was the tension I could not resolve in my head. Desire was normal. Wanting your wife was normal. Even wanting to see her, to feel that rush, to be pulled toward her body, that was not the shameful part. The shameful part was choosing a method that removed her choice. Because if I was honest, I could have asked. I could have said, I want you. I could have said, can I come in? I could have said, I miss you even though we live together. I could have risked hearing no and handled it like an adult. Instead, I took a path where no never had a chance to appear. That was why I kept feeling a coldness underneath the warmth. Not because I feared she would leave me, but because I feared what kind of man I was when I wanted something and chose a trick over respect. It was easy to call it harmless when nobody knew. It was harder when I pictured her face if she understood. And then I pictured something else, something that made my stomach twist. Not her judgment, other people's judgment. Because inside our bathroom it had felt like a private joke. Inside our marriage it had felt like a small shortcut. But if I said it out loud to strangers, I could already hear the silence after the words. I could already see the way the story would change shape once it left the house. Now imagine strangers hearing this story. How would they judge it? I had watched that shower moment in my head so many times that I started needing an outside voice. Not because I wanted approval, but because I wanted to know how bad it looked when it left the bathroom. So I wrote it out online, plain and short, the way people confess small sins when they hope strangers would call it normal. I said I was taller. I said I always set the shower head high. I said my wife could not reach it. I said she called me in to lower it. I admitted the real reason I liked it, even though I could see her undressed any time. Then I hit post and waited, like the comment section was a court. The first replies arrived fast. They did not ask for details. They did not ask about our relationship. They picked a side in seconds, like the whole story had been designed to test what kind of person you were when nobody knew you. One group treated it like harmless married flirting. They said couples teased each other. They said nudity in marriage was normal and constant, so this was not some serious invasion. They treated my trick like a silly way to keep desire alive, like a private game between partners. Their main point was that my intention sounded like affection, not harm. They spoke like intent was the only thing that mattered, and they assumed my wife would laugh if she knew. Reading those comments felt warm for a moment, because they let me hide inside the word playful. Then another group pushed back hard. They said consent still mattered at home. They said a shower was still private even if you shared a bed. They said being married did not create automatic permission to enter a space where someone was naked and vulnerable. Their point was simple and sharp. There was a difference between being allowed and being tricked. They did not care that I did not touch her. They cared that I engineered a moment where she had to ask, and that I enjoyed the power of that request. That group made my stomach tighten, because they described the exact thing I had tried not to name. A third group went further, and they made it sound serious in a way I was not ready to hear. They called it a red flag about control. They said I used a physical advantage to force a situation where she relied on me. They said small manipulations often started as jokes and then grew into habits that were harder to stop. They did not focus on nudity at all. They focused on the pattern. They talked like a shower head was only the tool, and the real issue was that I felt entitled to create problems so I could be the solution. I had read that and felt exposed, like strangers had seen the part of me I kept hidden even from myself. Another camp ignored the moral shouting and gave practical advice that hit me in a different way. They said I should talk to her and stop gaming her. They said if I liked seeing her, I should say that like an adult. They said I should ask for what I wanted and accept a no. They said I should agree on boundaries for playful moments because consent did not kill romance, it made it safer. That group did not call me a monster. They treated it like a relationship skill problem, like I had chosen a trick because I feared direct honesty. Their comments embarrassed me more than the angry ones, because they made my behavior look immature instead of evil, and I did not know which label felt worse. Then there was the camp that made jokes but with a strange edge. They treated the twist as funny. They focused on the detail that the setting was too high even for me. They called it cringe. They imagined me stretching on wet tile like a tall idiot, all for a 2-second peek. Some of them laughed at the idea of a grown man building a whole plan around a shower rail. But even inside the humor, there was discomfort. They pointed out how awkward it would feel to be naked and forced to call someone in. Their jokes kept the thread light, but the light made the shadows clearer. I had smiled once at a comment, then realized I had been smiling at my own selfishness. Another group tried to flip the story as a test. They told readers to reverse the roles. They asked how I would feel if my wife made a situation where I had to call her while I was exposed, and she acted helpful but secretly enjoyed catching me vulnerable. They asked how it would feel if the smaller partner did it to the bigger one, or if a man did it to a woman, or if anyone did it to anyone. Their point was not to shame me. Their point was to force empathy. They said the real question was whether she would consent if asked. If the answer was yes, then the trick was pointless. If the answer was no, then the trick was a problem. Then there was a quieter camp that made the whole thread feel more complicated. They said private jokes did not translate well to public judgment. They said some couples would honestly laugh and even enjoy it, while other couples would feel violated. They said the key factor was not what strangers thought, but what my wife felt in that space. They reminded everyone that internet norms were not universal rules. Their points sounded balanced, but it also scared me, because it meant I could not hide behind a vote. It meant the only person who could clear me was the one person I had kept in the dark. As the comments piled up, the tone got sharper. People started arguing with each other instead of with me. They called each other names. They used big words for small moments. Some readers acted like a shower head was proof of a dangerous personality. Others acted like anyone who cared about privacy inside marriage was paranoid. Both sides spoke with full certainty, like doubt was a weakness. Quick recap. The act was small, but the meaning was what people fought about. That sentence matched what I had felt in the bathroom. On paper, nothing bad happened, but in people's minds, everything depended on meaning. If it was shared flirting, it was sweet. If it was hidden control, it was creepy. If it was a pattern, it was a warning. If it was a one-time joke, it was nothing. The same 5 seconds changed shape depending on which fear a person carried into the story. I noticed something else too. The camps that defended me kept using the word harmless, but they also kept assuming my wife knew and liked it. They treated it like a game she had agreed to. But my post had said she did not know. The most supportive comments often erased the secrecy, because the secrecy made it harder to defend. The camps that criticized me did the opposite. They made the secrecy the main point. They did not need to imagine me doing anything worse. They said the secret itself was the harm. They said the moment became wrong when I decided she did not deserve the full truth. I sat there reading, feeling like I had split into two people. One was the husband who lowered the shower head and left. The other was the man who waited for her to call. The comments kept dragging that second man into the light, and he looked uglier in public than he did in my own head. What stuck with me most was how many people had said the same thing in different ways. It did not matter that I could see her naked any time. In fact, that made it worse, because it proved I did not need access. I wanted a specific kind of moment, a moment built on surprise and control. I started thinking about what I would do if I could rewind it, not the act of lowering the shower head, the act of raising it beyond reach in the first place. The comments made it clear that some strangers would excuse it forever, and some would condemn it forever. But none of them lived in my house. None of them heard her voice behind the curtain. None of them saw how she relaxed when the water finally hit right. And none of them had to face her if she ever noticed the height and connected the dots. That was the part I could not scroll away from. The thread was loud, but the truth underneath it was quiet and simple. I had created a loop that depended on her not seeing it clearly. I had built a private reward on a private blind spot. If my wife never noticed, it stayed a private joke, but did secrecy alone make it wrong? After I read all those arguments, the bathroom felt different in my mind. Not because the tile changed, or the shower changed, but because I finally saw how a small habit could carry a hidden meaning for years without anyone nomming it. The facts stayed plain. I was much taller than my wife. Before I showered, I set the shower head to the highest setting, not just high for my comfort, but all the way up. Later, when she stepped in, the water hit too high and she could not reach the holder to lower it. She called my name from behind the curtain because she needed help. I stepped in, lowered it, and I saw her undressed. I acted like I was only being helpful. And the most important detail was the one she did not know. I had done it on purpose. That was the whole story. No violence, no yelling, no big betrayal, just a pattern that lived inside a private room built from small choices I kept repeating. When I tried to defend myself, I kept coming back to the same thought. I already saw her naked often. I did not need a trick. I was not locked out of intimacy. I was not starved for closeness. We were married. We shared a life. We shared a bed. So why did I still want that moment? The answer was uncomfortable because it was not about nudity. It was about control and surprise. It was about creating a reason to enter. It was about hearing her call and stepping into the steam like I had been invited into something more than a quick fix. It was about taking a private win and leaving before it could be questioned. And the thing that made it feel even worse was how harmless it looked from the outside. If someone walked in at the wrong time, they would have seen a husband adjusting a shower head for his shorter wife. They would have seen routine kindness. They would have seen normal marriage stuff. But hidden inside that normal picture was a truth only one of us held. At the center, one partner knew the truth, the other did not. That imbalance was the problem I could not ignore anymore, because intimacy did not grow from access. It grew from choice, a real choice, a choice someone could only make if they understood what was happening. If she thought the shower head was high because I was tall, then her call for help was simple. It was just problem solving. It did not carry a deeper meaning. She stayed relaxed because she trusted the story. But if the shower head was high because I wanted her to call me in while she was exposed, then her call was not simple anymore. Then it became something I had pushed her into. The same words, the same bathroom, the same water, but a completely different meaning. That difference was what everyone argued about. Some people believed intention mattered most. If I meant it as affection, they said it could be harmless flirting. Some couples did enjoy small surprises. Some couples liked being walked in on. Some couples laughed at little setups because both people understood the game. Other people believed the method mattered more than the mood. They said a trick removed choice, and removing choice was the line. They said marriage did not erase privacy. They said the bathroom was still a boundary. They said it did not matter that I was not dangerous. It mattered that I practiced a small deception in a place where she should have felt safe without thinking. Both sides had a point, and that was what made it hard. Because if my wife had known and liked it, it might have been playful. But she did not know. And the fact that she did not know was not an accident. It was the fuel. That was the part I kept coming back to when the house was quiet and I could hear the shower through the door in my memory. Not the steam, not the water, not her body, the secret. I realized how easy it was for a relationship to collect secrets like dust. Not big secrets that exploded, but small ones that sat on everything. Small ones that changed how you moved. Small ones that made you careful in the wrong way. Small ones that trained you to hide instead of talk. And those were the little things that built or broke trust. A person could live with a lot if they chose it. A person could play along with almost any harmless joke if they agreed to it. But when one person chose and the other did not even know there was a choice, the closeness became something else. It became a story written by one hand. Final recap, it was not about the shower head, it was about choice. The simplest fix in my mind had never been a new shower head or a different holder or some clever workaround. The simplest fix had been honesty and agreement. Not a confession to make myself feel clean, but a conversation that respected her. A way to say what I wanted without turning her routine into a trap. A way to ask and accept the answer, even if it was no. A way to make the bathroom feel like hers again, not like a stage for my private joke. But even as I thought that, I knew why I had avoided it for so long. Because tricks felt safer than asking. Tricks let me get what I wanted without risking rejection. Tricks let me keep the image of being helpful while still feeding a desire I did not want to explain. And that was the real question this story left me with. Not whether a husband should want his wife. Not whether nudity in marriage was normal. But whether I had been willing to trade her comfort for my own small thrill, and then call it love because it sounded nicer. If you were the wife, would you have found it funny, or would you have felt tricked? Comment your take and share what playful meant in a relationship to you. Because the smallest little thing could have been the start of either deeper closeness or a quiet loss of trust.